Hi, and welcome to this new episode. This one is a special one because maybe you know, maybe you don't, maybe you've been part of it, but in the last few months, we had one great online event called the Confident Singer Bootcamp, and it was so amazing. People were so engaged. There were so many singers, passionate singers, asking for feedback, posting their songs, and getting results by shifting one little thing in their vocal technique or even in their mindset. And because it was so inspiring, I do want to share a little piece of it with you. So this episode will actually be a recording of that Confident Singer Bootcamp training. And it was just such an amazing event. So when the next one happens, I will tell you if you want. So in the link here in the description below, you can find the waitlist if you want to be part of our next bootcamp happening in a few months. So enjoy this very special episode, and I'll see you there in the recording. Bye. So here's a beautiful quote that I want to share with you. The cause is hidden. The effect is visible to all. Oftentimes, we don't see why someone is successful or why that particular person can enjoy singing so much more confidently than someone else. We don't see the cause. And as long as you can't find out the cause, all of our efforts are pointless. So where I would like to spend most of our time together throughout the next trainings of these bootcamps is here, underneath the surface. We're going to put our swimsuit on and we're going to be discovering the whole iceberg together. We're going to be discovering those causes. So I told you in the beginning of today that we're going to be singing a little bit less today because we needed to have foundations. And that's where this next exercise comes in, which is so important. And the reason why is because it makes no sense for me to teach you all the different vocal techniques or singing exercises if a part of yourself will slow down that growth. And that's what we're going to be doing now. So compare it to driving a car. Suppose you get into your car to go and drive somewhere. You put the key into your ignition. You turn the ignition on. You press the accelerator, but your car doesn't really move. What happened? I'm going to tell you. Your car doesn't move if your handbrake is on. So if you have your handbrake on and you're pushing the gas pedal, then you're not really going to be moving as fast as you want to, right? And giving you the different vocal techniques and exercises to help you grow as a singer, while parts of you are holding yourself back, can be compared to that car. It's like pressing the accelerator while your handbrake is still on. And we can't really move anywhere when that happens, right? So that's why we need to start here today. Today, we're going to be releasing that handbrake so that we can make big steps forward in our development as a singer. So I'm curious, when I talk about letting go of things that hold you back while singing, what could I be talking about? What is holding you back the most when it comes to singing? So let me know in the chats, what is holding you back? What is stopping you from achieving your big goals? And I'm seeing two types of responses, two broad categories. And the first category is everything that has to do with your skills. What Dimo was saying, improper technique and breathing. That's a skill that we can learn. But then there's a second category, which is mostly ourselves. So for example, the confident, or Hermine says judgment, that's the second category, the category of what goes on inside of us. So on one side, we have our skills, and on the other side, we have the limiting thoughts that we think, limiting beliefs that we think and hear when we're singing. So what is a limiting belief? Well, it's quite literally a thought that prevents you from doing something that you want to do. Something that Cleo says, negative things that people have said about my voice. So other people have said something negative about my voice, which means I'm not good enough. That is a limiting belief, for example. It's a belief that holds us back to really achieve what we want to be achieving. So first of all, everyone has those limiting thoughts. It's quite normal that they're there. But without being able to let these limiting beliefs go, these limiting thoughts go, we won't be able to release the handbrake, because that is the handbrake. That is what limits us and limits our growth as a singer. So that's why it's so important to start with this. Let me give you an example. Say that you are afraid to disturb your housemates when you're practicing. And if you're afraid of what they're gonna think about you when you're practicing, it might be that you're afraid of making mistakes. And so during your practice session, you will tend to stay away from things that challenge you, like maybe high notes or riffs or powerful belting notes, right? And that limits your growth as a singer because you stay in that comfort zone. See how that all works? So you kind of get into that vicious cycle. So it's important to be aware of these thoughts that hold us back to grow as a singer, because if we don't do that, then we end up in autopilot mode. And that can cause us to be in a victim mode. And then, we start saying things like, oh, my neighbors are not home, I can't practice now. Or see, I got a bad comment on Instagram. See, I told you I was not good enough. Or see, I told you I cannot learn, right? Victim mode. We don't want to have that. We want to be powerful. We want to have our own personal power. We want to be at cause of the things that we do in life. So the question that now arises oftentimes is, okay, I understand I have to release the handbrake, but how do I do that? How do I let go of those limiting thoughts that causes me to feel sad or insecure or anxious? Well, that's what we're going to be doing now, because it all depends on how we look at things. So it's about perspective. I'm going to describe something to you, and I'm very curious to know what emotion that you would associate with this. Your heart beats a little faster. Your hands sweat, your legs go numb as if you're getting pins and needles, your stomach turns upside down as if you've just gone off a roller coaster. When you see those symptoms, what emotion do you associate with that? Okay, so most people would associate these symptoms with fear. Now, Bruce Springsteen, we all know him, right? The guy from Born in the USA. He said this in one of his interviews. This is what he says. He says, just before I go on stage, my heart beats a little faster. My hands sweat a little. My legs go numb as if I'm getting pins and needles. And then I get a tight feeling in the pit of my stomach that starts to spin round and around. And then listen closely. When I get all those feelings, I know I'm excited, pumped up, and ready to go on stage. It's all about perspective. See, the symptoms are the same. He describes the symptoms exactly the same. Most people would associate that with nervousness, with fear, with anxiety. But he chooses to see that as excitement, as being ready. Isn't that beautiful? And being able to control your thoughts and consciously choose a perspective of how you look at things. Well, if you can do that, your whole world changes. Our thoughts are the most powerful things we have. Let me give you an example. So imagine I have just cut a little piece of lemon here and I'm giving it to you and you have it here in your hand. And now together, first of all, I want you to imagine, so you're seeing the lemon, right? You're seeing the yellow color. You're seeing a little bit of juice coming out. And then I'm going to ask you to take a big bite and really bite into the lemon. What happens physically? I don't know if you're like me, but if I think of biting into a lemon, my mouth starts to water. I even have that face of, ooh, it's so sour, right? My saliva is running. So you didn't eat a real lemon. You just thought about eating a lemon and still your body's producing saliva. Isn't that interesting? So our body reacts to our thoughts. That's how powerful our thoughts are. So what do you think would happen if we think that we are afraid of singing a high note? What would happen? How would our body react? Well, it will react. We know that because with a lemon, we get saliva. So if I'm thinking, oh no, the high note, I'm not going to be able to hit it. It's too high for me. Then there's a good chance that our body will react to it. And what happens? Everything's going to tense up. Here, all my muscle will tense up. We're going to be pushing our voices. And the result is that the high note might not come out the way we want it. See how powerful our thoughts are and how important it is to get a grip on those and release the handbrake. Because if we keep on going with all these limiting thoughts, if we keep on having that handbrake on, there's no point in me teaching you all the vocal techniques of the world because we're not going to be moving forward, right? So how do we release the handbrake? Well, step 1. Let me share my slides again. Step 1, being aware of what those limiting thoughts are. So again, now that you know what a limiting belief could be, what are some limiting beliefs that you have? What thoughts do you hear when you sometimes sing in front of others or by yourself? What are thoughts that are holding you back while singing? That is step 1, awareness, knowing what's going on. So step 1 is noticing these thoughts. And then we can go to step 2, which is changing them around, choosing another perspective. So an example could be, I'm not good enough. What's the opposite? Well, it's I'm good enough, right? That makes sense. But the problem here is oftentimes that singers will tell me, okay, I understand that this is the opposite, but I don't actually believe it yet. I don't feel it yet. Intellectually, I know what the new perspective could be, but I'm not on board. I don't believe it. I don't feel it yet. It's not in me, right? So that's where step 3 comes in. But first I want to go to step 2. So what would be the opposite of your limiting thought that you have just written down? Now, as I told you, you might not completely accept this new belief just yet. Because we've just turned it around, we flipped it. And this is where step 3 comes in. Step 3 is where we look for evidence to find and to support this new perspective. So the more evidence we can give our brain, the more we can accept and believe this new perspective. So you should know that our brain filters. So for example, a few years ago, I bought a red car. And since I bought the red car, I started seeing red cars everywhere. Is it because suddenly everyone has a red car? No, it's because my brain filtered. Before, I wasn't interested in red cars, but now that I had one, now my brain filters those red cars to make me aware of the other red cars. It's like, for example, if you had just become a mother, if you have just had your first child, then suddenly you see babies everywhere, right? Or maybe you want to have a baby and then suddenly you see babies everywhere. So our brain filters, and the same thing happens when we start believing a thought. So when we believe that we are not good enough, our brain will find evidence to support that. See, it's true that I'm not good enough because this person has just given me a very bad feedback on my singing video. I don't know. But the same applies to the opposite. So when we believe that we are good enough and we consciously look for evidence to support that, then our brain will more easily accept this new perspective. And that is how you can gradually release the handbrake so that you can grow faster as a singer. And I invite you to reflect on that this coming week. What is one evidence that could support that new perspective? Alex says, I have no idea. And that is also our brain trying to trick us, because whenever we ask our brain a question, our brain is designed to answer that question. And if you answer with I don't know, all right, question is answered, it's I don't know, let's move on to the next thing. That's what our brain thinks, right? So by answering with I don't know, you're actually shutting off the search for those new evidence. So sometimes it's good to just stay in the question and learn to be uncomfortable by staying in the question. Sometimes I have a question in my head and it takes me weeks that I'm pondering it over. And then I let it go for a little while and then I come back to it. And then suddenly when I'm doing my yoga or when I'm in my shower, suddenly the answer comes. And the answer comes because I have not shut it down yet, because I haven't said, I don't know, okay, case closed. See? But it's okay if you don't know, because of course this is new. So first was being aware of the limiting belief, then finding a new perspective, and then number 3 was finding proof to reinforce that perspective.